AITA for not being beside myself with grief over my miscarriage. Sorry in advance to those of you who are sensitive to this, but involves miscarriages, so stop reading I guess if it bothers you or you'll feel too sad. Up front, I want to say I understand that this is a very sad event for many other people, and in no way do I think my response is the right one or anything. Well, I had a miscarriage. In all honesty, we hadn't actually decided if we were going to keep it. I found out and we knew we had to make a decision ASAP, but things kept happening, and we couldn't really sit down and talk it through. This was over the span of 3 days. Nature decided for us, and my reaction after going to the hospital was phew. I didn't tell anyone because I knew I'd be seen as some heartless bitch, because everyone's supposed to walk around in a threadbare robe staring out of the window when this happens. I took 2 days off work to deal with it, and when I came back, people asked if everything was okay, etc. etc. There are a handful of women I am very close with at work, worked there for 9 years, and so after work one day we went out for drinks, and someone asked me what had happened because I don't really take time off. I explained what happened, and they were all very good friends and quick to be very emotional about it for me. I told them hey, it's okay, and no, it's really not that big of a deal, and listen, it'll be fine. But they kept making it into this big deal. I know, that's the normal thing to do. But eventually I said guys, I don't think we would have actually kept it anyway, it's okay, really. It wasn't in a very flippant way, I was sincere. This was the wrong thing to say because 2 of them got really upset at me, telling me how could I say that, what if someone around us suffered miscarriages and heard me talk that way, how I should never say that again. One of the other girls changed the subject, but one of the angry ones kept giving me looks all night. A few days later, I got a long email from her on my personal account telling me that she was horrified at the way I'd acted, that I have no understanding how awful and heartbreaking a miscarriage is, that she's worried I might be a sociopath, how could I be so callous about something very tragic, etc. I gently asked her if this is something that is very personal for her, and she responded with no, but what if it was? What if I was struggling with infertility and my friend just casually said she didn't want her miscarried baby to begin with? Do you have any idea how that would feel? I told her, copied from my last email. No, I don't know how that would feel. But I can't be held responsible for someone else's feelings. I'm sorry that I'm not beside myself with grief for a child I didn't want. She's been treating me very cold since. AITA. NTA. Grief, trauma, health, and so on are all deeply personal experiences. Everyone is going to feel them differently. Your coworker way overstepped her boundaries. And you were honest in your response. You are not in the wrong. NTA. This isn't about others. This is about you. You don't have to feel a certain kind of way to prove anything to anyone else. It reminds me of people wondering why I wasn't acting sad when my mom was dying. How we grieve isn't performance art for others. However you want to deal with your miscarriage is the way others should support you. NTA. And honestly I understand your perspective. As horrible as a miscarriage is for those who wanted a child, the fact that society expects you to wallow in emotional pain and is offended when you're not miserable over it is kind of alarming. IMO. You are allowed to be relieved. You are allowed to not want a child. You are allowed to not be emotionally affected by the loss of a pregnancy. I have no understanding how awful and heartbreaking a miscarriage is. You kinda do, because you had one. It's a different experience for every person. It's really shitty to tell someone they're reacting the wrong way. I started miscarrying before I knew I was pregnant. I went to the doctor simply because my period had been going on for 3 weeks and I felt kind of feverish. I was shocked and very disappointed because we had just started trying for a second baby. I did get pretty upset a few days later. But at the I had a nurse who seemed to have the same dark sense of humor that I do. He mentioned how much he likes dead baby jokes. I knew it was mean, but I said, "Do you know why I'm here?" He didn't. Ha 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 ha. Now I can say, "Wanna hear my funny miscarriage story?" NTA. I don't know about you, but that email would be taken immediately to HR if I were you. Fuck them, just because you're not in mourning does not mean they can send you abuse like that. Over a goddamn medical issue. So NTA. NTA. Some people become emotionally invested in their pregnancies right away and others don't. This person sounds very toxic. NTA. Literally every woman in my inner circle who has had a kid went through it, only 5, but still, one of them said 1 on 3 women do. It's unfortunate and sad, but it's your body and you have a right to feel how you want to about it. If 33% of women were beside themselves with grief every time this happened, well, that's a world I would rather not live in. Sounds like people may be projecting their beliefs on life starting at conception onto you. From someone who is infertile, NTA. It's no one's damn business how you handle your own medical situations unless you are asking them for help or support. You are allowed to feel however you want about your miscarriage. Unless you're skipping around town singing about it, I think you're okay. I damn well know how personal fertility is, but it's incredibly inappropriate to try to force your feelings on someone else. We as women, I think, need to relearn how to react to each other in these situations. You saying it's okay really means pretty much one of two things. Either it's deeply affecting you and you don't want to talk about it more right now, or it really is okay for you and not really bothering you. Either way, they should have dropped the subject. If one of them was really worried about you, they should have approached you later, one-on-one, and made it clear that they were available to talk if you needed, on your schedule. Not kept pushing you to discuss it and not berating you for your deeply personal reaction to a deeply personal situation. NTA. Your coworker had no right to judge you for your feelings, and she grossly overstepped by sending you a letter chastising you for feeling a certain way about something that happened to your own body. NTA. I experienced many miscarriages before having a successful pregnancy. I wasn't devastated. I was frustrated because we were trying to stay pregnant. I guess I must be a sociopath, too. NTA. Heavens, no. That lady is the asshole. If my friend said she was on the fence about keeping a pregnancy or if she wasn't sure about it, then had a miscarriage, we would toast alcoholic beverages to her good fortune. That lady needs to F off. NTA. That's actually a real dickheaded way to treat someone who had a miscarriage, only to make it about herself and be an ass to you for something that everyone else was turning into a non-existent problem. NTA. Usually phrases like thank you for your kindness, but I don't want to talk about it should to the job. Repeat until they give up. In the future, do not share such personal information with people whom you are not particularly close to. Especially not people at work, because once the rumor mill gets going, this can easily destroy your reputation. This was absolutely not these ladies' business, and they overstepped pretty much every boundary in polite society in trying to force their opinions and ideology upon you. A good rule in such situations is not to justify, argue, defend, explain. NTA. I had a miscarriage years ago when I was not ready to be pregnant. Was honestly relieved I didn't have to have an abortion. It's totally fine and normal you aren't grieving this, and it's ridiculous of anyone to demand you to be sad. So I've had more than one miscarriage, and they were all very much wanted. But, although I was gutted by the experience, I can't fault or blame you for the way you feel. You weren't sure if you wanted this baby, you had a really hard decision to make, and circumstances made the choice for you. In your shoes, I might have felt relieved rather than devastated. I don't know why your friends reacted the way that they did. I suspect it's because society expects women to conform to very specific roles, particularly when it comes to motherhood. I bet no one's giving your partner a hard time about this. Anyway, I'd have to go with NTA. NTA, and your friend, maybe former friend? Has lost the plot. Just because someone somewhere struggling with infertility doesn't mean you have to suddenly want to be pregnant or respond your own miscarriage with despair and regret. That's ridiculous. They asked you a personal question, and you gave them an honest answer. You didn't broadcast this news or your feelings about it, they asked, you told them. You didn't say anything offensive or radical. She made herself a victim in your story, that's on her. If she was triggered by what you said, she needed to take herself off and deal with it, not pour it onto you. I suspect you were right that this is personal. She's projecting issues onto you, and you can't control that. You're not a sociopath or an asshole. Your friend needs a therapist. NTA. Why do people act like one woman choosing not to have a baby is somehow an assault on a woman that wants a baby and can't have one? It's not like the fetus was going to magically transport itself from one uterus to another if it was wanted more. NTA. How dare people tell you how you should feel? Miscarriages, grief of any kind, is extremely personal and on a case-by-case basis. I'm glad your life is not going to be upended and you can move on, but you don't need to feel like there's something wrong with you because of how you feel. I have miscarried 2 babies and it broke me. But it's because I wanted those babies. I wanted them so hard I was actively trying to get pregnant, and in the case of the second one had gone through infertility shots and treatments and tests. So obviously how I felt was different than someone who was not even sure if they wanted the baby or not. You have the right to your feelings. Just as they have the right to theirs. If their miscarriage destroyed them. That is okay. That is how they felt about it. If it did not bother you that much, that is okay too. Just explain that you are personally not upset about it because you were not trying to have a kid and may not want kids right now. But obviously you understand why others would be devastated if it was a child they really wanted. Now if you said what you said and there was someone who was going through infertility at the table and you knew about that, then yes, you would be an asshole for saying that in front of her. I would have just changed the subject and said I didn't want to talk about it. But since as far as you knew there was not, then you are NTA. NTA. Wow. She called you a sociopath? Unacceptable. This woman is not your friend and is a perfect example of the importance of keeping the personal. NTA. People just get so invested in their internal narratives and thinking about what they believe they would do in your situation. NTA. No one can tell you how to deal with death or anything else. Your emotional response is going to be unique to you. You seem fairly rational. Others are intensely emotional, as is obvious in your co-worker. People like that will never understand a rational decision and a cool detachment from the situation to analyze it. Just let it cool down at the office, or don't. Not really your problem. NTA. No one gets to tell you how you should or should not feel about things that happen in your life. NTA. And they need to chill and tone it down a notch. NTA. I've had multiple miscarriages and they completely changed me as a person, and I still carry that pain with me every single day. No one has the right to tell you how to feel, just like people don't have the right to tell me or anyone else how I should grieve or process my loss. It's okay to tell people you don't want to talk about it and leave it at that. You don't know anyone any explanations. NTA. You're allowed to feel however you feel and you aren't responsible for the feelings of others, certainly not hypothetical feelings about hypothetical situations. I had a miscarriage once at about 7 weeks pregnant. Found out when there was no heartbeat at my initial ultrasound. I was upset when I found out, but I wasn't devastated. Not many people outside of family knew about the pregnancy since it was still early. I had told one coworker only because she kept asking when I was going to have another baby, so I told her actually I'm pregnant now. About a month later she saw me in the elevator and patted my stomach and made a remark about how I was still so skinny. Oh, that's because I had a miscarriage. Cue the "oh I'm so sorry, oh how awful." From my perspective, no big deal, it happens. The thing that hit hardest was the amount of money the D&C cost me. NTA for feeling this way. Frankly, it sounds like you told them you were fine and they didn't want to accept that. When they keep pushing the subject even though you keep telling them it's fine and to move on, then they are being the assholes. You were well within your right to say what you did. Even if you were upset, you have the right to not want to talk about it with your friends, and they need to accept that. NTA. You were in a completely different situation. A wanted pregnancy is a blessing, an unwanted pregnancy is a curse. NTA. You aren't required to get attached to a lump of cells that you don't even know if you want yet. Your reaction seemed perfectly normal to me. Definitely NTA. Everyone reacts differently to these situations. If you weren't really sure you were ready for a child, then maybe this was the best thing, albeit a terrible situation. You want to provide the right type of life when you have a child. That being said, look after yourself. You may not feel too bad now, but that may change in the coming months or years. NTA. Everybody grieves differently. Your co-worker has no right to tell you how to grieve. NTA. I require IVF to get pregnant, and it sucked while everyone was getting pregnant, and we were doing doctor visit after doctor visit. But why should my infertility mean other people must have babies? NTA. You're not required to want a baby just because you got pregnant. It's okay to be in a position where that's not the right choice for you. A friend of mine had one and was relieved afterwards as well because she was in college and just wasn't financially or emotionally in a place to have a baby. There's nothing wrong with that. Ta is the one who is trying to make you feel guilty for feeling your feelings. This really pissed me off. As a woman, you have total control over your body and the freedom to feel any type of way you want. It is not your responsibility to be sensitive to a hypothetical situation that doesn't even involve you. Also, it feels like there is some internalized sexism there. NTA. Your coworker is trying to shame you and make you conform to her standards. Does that sound fair or right to you? Ignore her. NTA. No one gets to tell you how to feel about your body and be in the right. NTA. It's the height of egotism to expect everyone to emotionally respond to a situation the same way. Your coworker has very low emotional intelligence and is taking offense because she feels that opposing emotional states are a threat to her emotional state. She needs to learn to compartmentalize a little bit more. BTW, you're definitely not a psychopath. A psychopath would have read the room and used those ladies' emotions to manipulate or to acquire social benefit. NTA. I had a miscarriage yesterday and it was so early, 6 weeks, only pregnant for a week, that even though I really wanted the baby we're trying, I feel a sense of guilt for not being broken up with grief. My friends seem unsure how to react when I tell them I'm fine and that I've had worse periods. NTA. Loss is a personal thing. If this isn't a loss for you, it isn't a loss for you. I didn't feel attached to my much-wanted pregnancies in the early days. I would have been sad if I'd miscarried, but that would have been because I wanted a baby, not those babies in particular. NTA. No one can tell you how to deal with the things that happen to you. It sounds like you hadn't formed a bond with the fetus, and nature taking its course would be a relief to almost anyone that was weighing the option of abortion. Your coworker is tough for implying you should have valued a fetus more than you did, but it's your body and your life. I'm sorry she's being so judgmental. NTA. People really need to chill out with the whole getting offended on other people's behalf thing. Even if she was traumatized by a miscarriage, still NTA. It's everyone else around you who was making a big deal about it, you just wanted them to drop it. NTA. They are calling you an asshole based on a hypothetical? WTF, tell them they can fuck off. NTA. For everything stated above. Everyone has their own experiences. I had 2 miscarriages, and I'm happy it happened. I had no idea I was pregnant, but I know that due to family history that I will most likely not be able to carry to term. I was very happy to find out my intensified mental health problems were from being pregnant and not my problems getting worse. Was it terrifyingly painful? Yes. Do I feel bad? No. Do I wonder what could have been? No, because I wasn't at a point in my life where I could even have children responsibly. Everyone around me that wasn't directly involved was insanely judgmental. My first miscarriage was made public by an ex, and everyone thought I was a whore who promoted abortions in a very, very white conservative town, but I really just didn't have proper sex ed. Thank God for the internet. Fuck all that noise. They want to dictate your feelings when they have no idea what you're going through. Physically and emotionally. You do you. NTA. You weren't sure about whether you wanted to keep it, and that co-worker is taking it way too personally and is butting into what is your private business. NTA. NTA. There is no one way to feel. Your feelings are valid and she was out of line. I've been the person who couldn't get out of bed because I miscarried. It's been 5 years and healthy rainbow surprise now 4 twins later, and I still get emotional thinking about it. That's okay. Being happy because you weren't sure you wanted the baby is okay too. It's a natural thing that many of us go through. We should be able to talk about it and any feelings associated with it without shame. NTA. They were there to help you with your mental health, or so they claimed. Sorry, I guess. For your loss. I'm glad you're not overly stressed about it. If you do decide you need to talk, feel free to PM me. I promise, I've been told that I'm as cold as you, so I'm a good rant about overly emotional PPL. Lol. NTA. As someone who has had a miscarriage, I can understand what you are saying. I was 20 and got pregnant accidentally. I was not ready for a kid, but the option for an abortion was not on the table. I remember clearly getting out of the hospital and being poked and prodded while bleeding, then feeling relieved that my life was not over and I could finish my bachelor's degree and not have to be tied to that person. Am I sad it happened? Yes. Am I okay with it happening? Hell yeah, I am. The women at your work need to stay in their lane. Not everyone has the same reaction and you can't force your own ideals on others just because you were offended. NTA everyone grieves in their own way, and zero people have the right to tell you how, when or even if you grieve. NTA. Women don't all feel the same about miscarriages. You don't owe anybody an explanation. Just tell people you're doing okay and you don't want to talk about it. NTA if you weren't emotionally attached, you weren't emotionally attached. That's literally only your business, and your friend is completely out of line. Particularly telling you don't understand miscarriages, what the fuck? That's so incredibly insensitive. She's the one who's completely failing to be empathetic. She's just upset you're not conforming to her expectations because she's decided you should be racked with grief. NTA. No matter how awful I felt about something, that pain is my own to bear. I'd welcome and appreciate anyone that wants to share it with me, but like hell would I expect everyone to fall on their faces too. You were right. You are not responsible for her feelings. NTA. I'm currently pregnant myself, and TBH if I miscarried I don't think I would try for another kid afterwards. This pregnancy is super hard on me as being high risk, but that's the thing. Everyone's different, she's shaming you for feeling a certain way, and that's not cool in the slightest because not everyone feels the same way about pregnancy and children. At worst I'm ambivalent, and at best I'm surprised my husband could get me pregnant in the first place. Don't worry about people acting like you're a freak for not fitting their mold of what a true childbearing mother should be. It's better to have no feelings towards a traumatic event than to be completely fucked up from it. NTA. I am currently dealing with infertility, and just because I'd be devastated over a miscarriage doesn't mean every woman experiencing one has to. Some people don't want children, either now or at all, and that's fine. NTA. I lost a baby at 20 weeks, and really, I don't feel personally affronted about anyone's choices, anyone's grief. NTA. I have had 2 miscarriages of 2 wanted pregnancies, and after the first one, I was devastated, but I was just a little sad after the second. The difference was the first time we were actively pursuing fertility treatment, and I really expected the pregnancy to work. The second was an oops after 2 years of failed fertility treatments. At that point, I knew the chances of the pregnancy being viable were extremely slim. Like 1% slim. So I guess I was prepared and wasn't thinking of it as a potential child. Sure enough, there was no heartbeat and no growth past 5 weeks. Anyway, I was sad because it was the locking of a door that had already been shut, but certainly not devastated. All that to say, people are allowed to feel however they want about what's happening to their own bodies, and fuck anyone who thinks differently. Also, I am guessing your coworker is going through something regarding her fertility, and so her freak out really has nothing to do with you. NTA. I am someone struggling with infertility who has suffered an absolutely heartbreaking miscarriage. I understand that not everyone is in my position or would react the same way I did. Your friend was totally out of line. I would never shame my friend in that way. NTA. I suffered a miscarriage at 12 weeks and years of infertility. For me, my miscarriage was all-encompassing, debilitating grief. But I was pregnant for 3 months, I felt him growing inside me, and we had been trying for a baby. If I had been, let's say 20, unsure about my future or desire for a kid, and miscarried days after finding out, yeah, I probably would have felt relieved as well. NTA. Your feelings are your feelings, and theirs are theirs. You said nothing insulting or offensive. They were in the wrong to keep pushing the issue, and the girl who emailed you has some obvious issues of her own. NTA. I miscarried a very wanted pregnancy very early in the pregnancy. Other than one day of crying and being sad, which was probably partially hormonally driven, I didn't feel devastated. It was hard when my friends treated me like I was super fragile and should be devastated. I mean, it sucked, but it was so early in the pregnancy that I wasn't really pregnant mentally. I'm now very pregnant with a healthy girl, and my miscarriage doesn't define me. NTA. Up to 50% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, not everybody gets upset over it. Hell, half of those are before people even know they're pregnant. It can be a tragedy for others, it doesn't have to be tragedy to you. They wouldn't let it go and you tried your best. NTA. A lot of women feel this way. You didn't know if you were ready to have a kid or not. Nature decided that you weren't. A lot of women are glad at the fact that they miscarried instead of having to abort the baby, it's quite natural. NTAGs. These anti-choice psychos are really out here. It's okay. A lot of people are relieved to become no longer pregnant. NTA, I recently had a miscarriage as well. Considering it was my ex-boyfriend's baby and I'm still in college living with my very conservative, very religious mom, I was relieved as well. We all handle situations differently. I'm ultimately sad I won't have a baby, but I know given my situation it's for the better. No one can tell you how to feel. NTA. Like lol, what kinda bull, sorry I'm not depressed and sad, sorry my feelings didn't accommodate your expectations, WTF does she want you to say, do they want you to be miserable or some shit? NTA. It is already no one's business what you choose to do with your body or what you experience with your body, so it's no one's business how you react to what you experience, either. To be cold towards you because you aren't heavily grieving 24/7 is ridiculous. It's also incredibly immature for your coworker to be throwing out what-if statements in which other people's feelings are prioritized over yours in a situation that revolves around you. I know this situation doesn't have anything to do with babies, but imagine this exact same situation in regards to, say, a relationship ending. You and a boyfriend break up mutually and you are down for a day or so, and over drinks you tell your coworkers why you were a bit blah for a few days. When they tell you they're sorry, you say, oh, it's fine, I was going to break it off soon anyway. Then the coworkers look horrified and a few days later someone says it's insensitive that you talked about how your relationship ending isn't a problem because Karen can't get a boyfriend and she really wants one. I don't know if that makes sense, but you're not the asshole here. Edit was for a grammatical error I originally made. NTA, and not alone. My miscarriage is barely a blip on the landscape of my life. I don't talk about it much because your coworker's reaction is unfortunately common. NTA. How far along were you? 1/3 of pregnancies result in miscarriage. My wife had a miscarriage at about 8 weeks, and honestly we were both more devastated by our cat dying a couple weeks prior. NTA, there's nothing I hate more than people who try to police other people's feelings. You can't control how they'd feel about a miscarriage, just like they can't control how you feel. Furthermore, think about how women with infertility would feel about you not wanting your baby. Pregnancy seems to be a huge go-to for shaming women who aren't infertile. Just because there are women that can't get pregnant doesn't mean that women who can should have to go through pregnancy. Their infertility is not your fault. If you were talking to someone about their infertility and you said something about how you don't care about your miscarriage, that would be distasteful. But since you were discussing your miscarriage, the topic of infertility has no place in the conversation. NTA, because you are entitled to feel however you want to feel. It's your feelings. NTA. NTA, these are your feelings that are at hand here. People really are vapid and self-centered, aren't they? Imagine how that would make me feel. You're not supposed to react that way, this troubles me. NTA, I've been in that exact position and I understand completely. Miscarriage can be a touchy subject for people. I got quite a few looks when I answered honestly about the relief I felt when I miscarried. But if you're not ready, you're not ready, and you shouldn't feel guilty about it. NTA. My miscarriage was a blessing. I didn't see it as clearly as you at the time, but I have 2 living children now with a different man, one that I'm grateful for every single day. I'm so relieved I didn't have that baby with the narcissist I was dating. My life would have been hell with him in it for 19+ years. You are allowed to grieve or not, however you choose. NTA, from any way you slice it. Who is she to tell you how to act, feel, and say about something so personal? You could be internalizing it for all she knows. She's 100% in the wrong, and you have no reason to be ashamed. NTA. Some women grieve very deeply, just because they do doesn't mean that you have to. No one should be telling you how you have to grieve or not. NTA. You don't have to pretend to be broken up over something you're not just because someone else might have been. NTA, I've had 3 miscarriages. I still don't expect you to be torn up if this isn't something you wanted. That said, there are also plenty of women who would be torn up in the same scenario. That's also perfectly normal. Pregnancy, miscarriage, childbirth. It's all complicated. Pretty much any range of emotion is normal and to be expected. NTA, unless you react that way in front of someone currently suffering infertility and/or had a miscarriage recently, because pregnancy may be a sensible subject. But her feelings about a hypothetical situation and about your reaction when you weren't sure if you wanted the child or if you wanted an abortion, they're completely unfounded. She's really rude to not understand your feelings. NTA she doesn't get to dictate how you feel, and she's being tahir. She's being judgmental and condescending. Find a better friend. It's kind of ironic how we deal with such matter and how much we are affected by it is personal. Let's say for a moment you were having trouble dealing with it and decided to keep your grief for yourself, they kept bringing it up all the time. That isn't a whole move of them. Who do they think they are, that they can push how you should feel on you? What if someone else was actually overhearing them bringing it up all the time? When I was younger my one friend died in a car accident happened right before my eyes, blood everywhere. And people, including my parents, kept telling that I must feel horrible and since I was 8 at the time, actually placed me in therapy. I didn't want that, it wasted my time because I didn't feel anything about it. Miscarriage, abortion, and deciding to have a baby are all deeply personal things that only a woman and her partner can decide for herself. I've had 3 miscarriages and they all hurt like hell. But that's because I wanted those babies and was trying to get pregnant in the first place. Obviously this was an oops I got pregnant thing, since you weren't planning it. You should really use birth control though and avoid all of this. Make it easier on yourself, at the very least. If you don't want a kid, prevent these kinds of situations from happening because obviously they can and do happen. NTA. You were pregnant with a child you obviously did not want. And that's okay. Not all pregnancies are convenient or wanted, and that's why we're lucky to live in a country where abortion is, mostly, legal. We all know it's not in certain states, I'm not here to argue about that, losing an unwanted pregnancy that was a few weeks along and not being torn up about it. I don't see how that makes you anything that you were called. Being relieved you're not pregnant when you don't want to be isn't a bad thing. It's normal to be relieved that your body isn't going to go through unbelievable trauma to carry and deliver a child. I had a friend who got pregnant and she already had a toddler. She was on birth control. Then she had a miscarriage. She said I don't know if this makes me an asshole, but I was so relieved. I can barely handle one, how was I gonna handle 2? Don't worry op, your NTA and the girls you work with are over-empathetic. If someone heard you? Who cares, why were they listening to your conversation? If someone is struggling with infertility? How is that your fault? You're in the clear and your responses are normal and understandable. NTA. I had a similar situation myself. Pregnant, unplanned, was still umming and ahhing over whether it was even a sensible choice to keep it, and then I had a missed miscarriage. TBH I was a little sad that the choice was taken from me, but I probably would have terminated at that time. I needed 2 weeks off work to recover physically, but I didn't need any time to recover mentally. It just seemed like a non-issue. To me it wasn't even a baby at that time. If I decided I wanted a baby after that I could just try again once we were in a better place, which we did, and now I have a wonderful 8-week-old boy. I went back to work and 2 other women on my team were heavily pregnant and were besides themselves with grief for me. It felt overwhelming and I broke down because people were thrusting grief onto me that I didn't feel and I just felt swamped and guilt-tripped and told I just needed time to process and that I'd feel sorrowful soon enough. I am so glad those women went on maternity leave shortly after because I was close to breaking point and it felt like I'd be harrowed by pregnant mama guilt indefinitely. NTA, you are entitled to your feelings about your own experiences. Your friend is definitely an asshole for daring to tell you off about a hypothetical situation that would affect her when you've just been through a miscarriage yourself. A true friend would have swallowed her own qualms about abortion and fertility while they are supposedly there to support you through what they think is a hard time for you. I've had miscarriages of desired pregnancies, and my feelings were a mix of pain for the loss and relief that a non-viable pregnancy had ended. And I have found that talking about it and sharing with other people who have gone through it helps. But I can't even imagine my reaction if a friend tried to make me feel guilty about any of my feelings. Sorry to be so harsh about that lady, but her reaction and the subsequent email were absolutely out of line. Edit. You are definitely not a sociopath, but your friend seems like a raging narcissist. NTA. I always hated that pro-life, how could these women be getting abortions when so many others want babies so desperately? Argument. I know you didn't abort, but your coworker's anger seemed to stem from you mentioning you may have. Your life and your decisions are yours. Nobody has the right to make you feel bad because of them. I feel for people who struggle with getting pregnant, truly. At the end of the day though, if I became pregnant out of the blue, I would be thinking of myself and my family, not them. You are not the asshole. Not even a bit. NTA it's your life and your body, and how you react to events that are entirely about it, and it alone is your prerogative. No one has the right to tell you how to feel. NTA. I had an early miscarriage. I was devastated because we were trying to get pregnancy at the time. I got over it quickly though. I am thankful, however, that it was an early one, as I've had a coworker suffer a miscarriage in the middle of her pregnancy. You never know what someone went through, and you don't need to be responsible for someone else's feelings. But sometimes it's better to just leave some things unsaid. NTA. Everyone who has gone through a miscarriage experiences it differently, and your emotional response to it is perfectly normal, especially considering you weren't sure what you wanted to do. Tell your friend to pull her head in and stop fighting a battle no one asked her to. NTA. An unborn fetus is not a person, there's no reason to really be sad if it dies. NTA. Some people purposefully terminate their pregnancy, and no one bats an eye. Your NTA. She is the asshole for telling you how you should feel based on hypothetical feelings she could have had. Fuck her. NTA. Highly emotional women can be so fucking weird sometimes in needing to control what they think are appropriate emotional responses from other women. The woman who sent you the email was totally out of line. Your response to your situation was yours and deserves respect. And I say this as a woman who has had a lot of miscarriages. NTA. It's messed up of her to tell you your reaction to such a personal event is wrong. Everyone reacts differently, and everyone is also in a different situation. For some people, a miscarriage can be so devastating, traumatic and heartbreaking, while there could also be a situation where someone is actively happy. What if a woman was already 100% sure that she was going to get an abortion, but then before she could go for the appointment it turns out she miscarries? That hypothetical woman would likely be happy or at least relieved. Everyone is having a different experience and it's okay to have different reactions. I could also see how it might potentially be insensitive to say certain things certain ways, like if you were like, "Yeah, miscarriage." But by the sounds of it, you did not discuss it in any sort of way that would be insensitive to someone else who has had a more devastating experience with miscarriages. Sounds like your coworker friend is honestly being irrational and overdramatic, or maybe it is a very personal subject for her, but she just doesn't want to say it is. NTA. It sounds like they have a problem with abortion in general to me and are using the whole "but what about women who miscarry" argument, but on someone who miscarried. It's none of their business and it happens all the time without women even knowing. NTA. I completely understand. NTA. You don't owe a grief performance over losing a pregnancy you didn't plan and weren't committed to for the benefit of people who can't have children. You're allowed to have whatever feelings you have about your miscarriage, and they're assholes for telling you how you should feel and how you should perform those feelings for others. NTA. And did she really say that you, having just had a miscarriage, didn't know how awful it was, even though she had never experienced anything similar? NTA. Everyone processes things differently. NTA. Tell her friend to fuck off. People nowadays don't know how to step out of others' business anymore. NGL. I haven't been so pissed off in ages, but this particular lady had done a really good job on doing it. NTA. And that was extremely inappropriate to send you through a private email. If she wanted a confrontation, she should have had the balls to do it in person. I hate when people think that they're entitled to other people being sensitive for them. She turned this whole situation into a me ordeal for absolutely no reason. Especially with her fake what if situation. Whether she was or was not, it doesn't fucking matter. You are not responsible for other people's feelings. NTA. What if you had aborted it? I'm guessing she's against that in general because she mentioned it was offensive to infertile people and those who have gone through miscarriages. You didn't imply that all miscarriages were okay or that they're not big deals. If you hadn't decided and didn't know if you wanted it, have no connection to the pregnancy, and view early-term pregnancies as less of a loss for you personally, then it's fine for you. You didn't impose those views onto or judge others that might be grieving in a similar situation. Honestly, is she wishing you were distraught and horrified and depressed instead? I'm guessing it was more about your choice to possibly not keep it in the first place and you not having an instant attachment that she was truly offended by. NTA. You have every right to feel the way you feel. Miscarriages are only a big deal if it was a wanted child. There is this expectation that women are eager to have children, and that is only true for some. NTA. No matter how you react to having a miscarriage, somebody will judge your reactions harshly. It's one of those weird, sucky things about life. NTA. I think a lot of women have been relieved by miscarriages. And your friends should have followed your lead in not wanting or to be a big deal. The problem is, everyone assumes how you should feel. NTA. WTF is wrong with those ladies, you're not an asshole or a sociopath. Not everybody feels the same way, and it's totally fine to not have a big attachment or bond to a fetus a couple weeks old. NTA. This is a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, and it's hard to know how other people feel about it, what triggers them. No, you're not a sociopath. Fertility issues, miscarriages are usually very emotional for people because they've developed emotional attachments to their future family or baby, which is normal and healthy for someone who intends to care for an infant in the near future. In your mind, there wasn't really a baby yet, since you hadn't decided if you were going to keep it. So it makes sense that when you lost the baby, you didn't experience that as loss. I have not lost a baby before though, so this is all coming from someone without that personal perspective. We're social creatures, and commiserating is a big part of how we work through our emotions. It is a visceral response to punish someone who is not performing their grief properly, which of course doesn't make it right, but hopefully helps you understand why she came after you and that it wasn't really about you at all. NTA. NTA. You deal with your body the way you need to. It's your body and your life. NTA. I've lost 5 wanted pregnancies, and honestly I was not filled with grief after the first. Everyone deals with things differently, and those women need to shut their faces. NTA. NTA. I went through something very similar to you, and I felt the same way. You're allowed to feel how you want about this. People are weird about pregnancy and can't seem to realize that not every woman is going to be excited about it. NTA. A lot of women understand that it wasn't even a baby yet. You weren't in the right place to have the baby anyway, and as you said, nature took the choice out of your hands and you are happy with the outcome. A bunch of people get extremely weirded out that I don't get sad when I mention that my mother is dead. What can you do? NTA. I didn't feel grief over my miscarriages, only relief. I made the mistake of telling a few people that I figured would take my lead on how I felt about it at least, but instead I got showered with I'm sorries and assurances about how there will be other children, even after I explained my feelings about probably choosing abortion anyway. In retrospect, I should have just kept it to myself. People have strong feelings on this subject, and me being the coldly logical person I am just leads to awkwardness. NTA. I really think that movies and TV shows exaggerate what you're supposed to feel, but in my opinion, I think it's a bit ridiculous. I've never been in the situation, but I feel that it's not really part of your family until it's born, and people want to feel a connection to something because they need that emotional symbol. I don't really understand how someone could feel immense loss unless they've been trying for a long time or just really want a child. Your emotions are valid and you shouldn't feel bad about feeling a certain way. NTA. And the reason they think you're an asshole is because you said you were seriously considering abortion, probably, not because of any offense they're taking on behalf of other women who had miscarriages. Because how dare you not want a baby? That said, if anyone else acts like they were towards you, I'd probably recommend just deflecting that this is a very personal thing and you're dealing in your own way, and them talking about it is doing the opposite of helping. None of those things are untrue. NTA. Don't let your coworkers try to tell you how to feel. That's fucking ridiculous, and I'm actually kind of angry for you. Someone who would actually prefer you be depressed and traumatized because it fits their worldview better is not a very good friend. Some people can't tell the difference between their own emotions, opinions, and what is normal and moral. It's their fault for being so nosy. So many women should be so lucky to have that happen rather than face an abortion or unplanned birth. Congrats on the easy decision. NTA. I suffered 2 miscarriages and it was horrible. If I was your friend, I'd be relieved you weren't going through that. Everyone reacts differently and you're not wrong for the way you feel. Your coworker is out of line. NTA. Everyone deals with grief differently, and they have no business telling you how to grieve. It's that simple. Definitely NTA. It sounds like you weren't even that far along, which means you probably wouldn't have formed an attachment, especially since you probably weren't going to keep it. Some women don't even feel it's real until they're holding the baby, and some never have that connection. It's taboo not to have maternal instincts, so nobody is outspoken about it, but it's a lot more common than what you hear. Everyone experiences things differently. NTA: the one who got all buttered at you has shitty boundaries. What if you had gone to them and admitted to an unwanted pregnancy and that you had gotten an abortion? Would she feel free to tell you that you are a horrible human being for daring to mention abortion around someone who hypothetically could have miscarried? She has absolutely no business telling you how you are required to respond emotionally to something that happens to you. It is your life, not hers or anyone else's, and she would do well to not get the two conflated. NTA: it's your situation, you are entitled to your feelings. NTA: I'm being honest here, I don't get the insane emotion people go through when they have a very early miscarriage. But I guess I can understand if it's someone who's been trying for a very long time. Either way, you are not abnormal for not caring, and they have no right to judge you for not having the same reaction they would. Fuck 'em. NTA: people react differently for the same situation. I had one a couple years ago and was like, meh, wasn't time. A good friend of mine lost her first, and she reacted by saying while she was sad, it obviously wasn't time and it would happen eventually. Lastly, another friend of mine had found out while I was around 5 months with my first, and she completely cut me out cause she was so heartbroken and couldn't stand to be around someone who was carrying. Everyone has their own reaction, and it's okay to have whatever one you have. NTA: 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 you had no emotional connection, it happens, it seems like you weren't even trying for a baby. You don't have to be upset over things just because others do. Same thing when some people take months to get over a breakup, others are fine in a week. We cope with emotions differently. To you, that pregnancy wasn't a child, it wasn't part of you or your story, you are 100% NTA. NTA: you don't understand how terrible a miscarriage is, but you literally just had one? People handle everything differently. NTA: you can always blame your grief for your lack of grief if these people get too invasive. Otherwise, feel your own life, not theirs. Absolutely NTA: your coworkers were obviously trying to make your grief all about themselves and got offended when you wouldn't take it. How dare you not be as sad as we are about this thing we just learned about that affected your life 100% more than it affected ours. NTA: sounds like they need therapy, wow. Don't feel bad about not feeling bad. It's a part of life, and if you weren't sure, why would you beat yourself up about this? I think they stepped out of line with that mail. NTA: you have the right reaction to this situation because it is your situation. Fuck your asshole coworker and fuck anyone else who wants to tell you how to feel. Hope you're all right up. NTA: her opinion, her problem, not yours. NTA: NTA: I had one in college when I was 19, and honestly it was the biggest relief of my life. Many other people can't relate to the idea of being happy it happened because they want to have a baby. However, when you aren't in the right place to have a child, having a miscarriage isn't a tragic event. There's a kind of odd practicality about tragedies that's gotten me in trouble with peers before. Shit happens. People die. It can be sad, but it's part of life. My emotions aren't broken either. I'll cry my eyes out over a movie, but when my last grandparents, who I care for deeply, finally go, I may not. In my case, they are already quite old, so it's always a possibility. So frankly, being able to shake off something shitty is a great coping mechanism. Unless you're going out of your way to make other people feel like trash, that practicality is okay in my book. Shit happens and you're only an asshole about it if you're intentionally disregarding other people's feelings and coping. You didn't do that. NTA: NTA: something like 80% of us have had them. If we all went around being devastated, the world would be a gloomy place. It's one thing if you're having fertility issues, but otherwise, almost everyone, not counting men of course, has them. I was sad after mine, but when I got pregnant with my rainbow baby, I got over it pretty quick. NTA: in the first place, when you said you were fine, they should have stopped pushing the subject. NTA: if anything, your coworker sounds like the asshole for invalidating how you feel about your miscarriage over her hypothetical miscarriage. NTA: telling me that she was horrified at the way I'd acted, that I have no understanding how awful and heartbreaking a miscarriage is. That part is my favorite. You literally had a miscarriage, you do know. NTA, I miscarried around December last year. Didn't even realize I was pregnant because missing my period is a common thing for me. Everyone had such an emotional response and I was actually glad because my hubs and I have no plans for children. NTA. People grieve in different way or feel no grief at all. It's almost as if emotions are highly personal and unique things. How do people still not understand this basic universal concept? NTA, WTF? Shouldn't they be glad you're fine instead of das etc? NTA. If you had decided to abort, how would they have responded? Would they be shaming you if you weren't all torn up about it? This isn't really much different. NTA. You acknowledge that miscarriage is an extremely difficult thing for some people to deal with. That's all that's really required of you. You don't have to be distraught over it, nor do you have to pretend to be distraught on account of some hypothetical situation that really, honestly, it's basically unrelated to your situation anyway. NTA. In fact, this other person was completely wrong to email you and say what she did. I have been in fertility groups and people can be very sensitive and demand warnings in the subject line of emails, etc., but this goes way beyond that. To attack you for what she felt was less than serious mourning after your miscarriage, how dare she? To accept that nature took the decision out of your hands was your reaction to your miscarriage. I had several miscarriages, and while disappointed I looked to the future right away. Chronic infertility causes some women to name 8-week-old miscarried fetuses and add their death dates to their signature. This is simply reminding yourself of your grief and wallowing in it. Imho. Pushing that unhealthy behavior on you is unbelievable. Infertile lady here. You are 1000% NTA. The whole point of modern society in most countries anyway is it is your choice. And partners too. Don't ever let anyone dictate or make you feel shitty for being honest about how you feel. I think she has some other issues going on isn't saying. NTA, whether it's about a miscarriage or something else, you aren't responsible for how other people feel. It's your life. It sounds like you got yourself mixed up in a nasty batch of PC culture and child adoration. You were honest with these women, you weren't rude, and they should have respected you for your feelings. Even if one of them had personally been affected by a miscarriage, an outburst wouldn't have been warranted. NTA, even if she had personal issues surrounding this topic, that doesn't change the fact that you didn't want this baby in the first place. You are allowed to feel the way you feel, as long as you're not an asshole about it, and it doesn't seem like you are. She's in the wrong for trying to police your feelings. NTA, I had a miscarriage of a very wanted planned pregnancy, and I bounced back very quickly. I only took one day off work and really only had one good cry about it, and that's it. Many people were very surprised, even my OB was a bitch about it. You sound very happy for someone having a miscarriage. Fuck you, lady. My BFF just so happened to be pregnant at the same time, and she was contemplating abortion, and it didn't bother me at all. Just because I'm ready for a baby doesn't mean my friend is. I supported her during her termination because we all led different lives. 7Y at definitely NTA, ignore that person best you can. NTA, I've had a few miscarriages and I never felt sad either. You're normal and she overstepped. NTA, emotions and reactions to things can't and shouldn't be policed. It's kind of ironic them telling you that you should think about how some other hypothetical friend in a hypothetical situation might feel about your feelings towards your situation, whilst they invalidate and criticize your feelings to your real, non-hypothetical situation. As others have said, everyone reacts differently to these things, and you are entitled to your feelings. NTA. NTA. I understand how devastating this could be for someone desperately wanting a baby, but that wasn't your situation, and society's emphasis that you should be destroyed by the news is nothing but toxic. It has not only made you feel bad for looking at the situation with a healthy outlook, but will make lots of women who aren't able to do so feel even worse because it's been emphasized so often about how awful a situation like this is. Psychologically, it teaches us that depression is the correct way to be feeling. I'm glad you and your partner are okay, and I'm sure when the time is right for you two things will happen when they're meant to. NTA. I was in your situation about 5 years ago, fresh out of university, starting my first job, and at a very tense time with my then boyfriend. Even though the miscarriage was a trigger for some bad hormonal issues, I never felt sad, and it really wasn't a big deal. I'm definitely a person who's always been excited about having kids and a big family, but it was a few moment for me as well. I felt, honestly, aggravated by the pity this got from my friends, while in comparison my mother, a very emotional and caring person, said in a matter-of-fact way that these things happen, and she left it at that, which vibed a lot better with how I was feeling. So they beg you to tell them, you do. You say it's not a big deal, and they then ridicule you for not being more charismatic to other people who suffered the same thing. What kind of weird bent sociopathic, manic, rage fit crap is that? They made you feel bad for not feeling bad to the point you had to make this AITA post. That's the part that got me. You're obviously NTA and never will be. However, your hypocritical coworkers, especially the one that emailed you, definitely are. This one, and I hate to use this term, literally triggered me. I despise people like that. Sorry for your loss and the headache. NTA. It's no one's business how you react to things. TBH, I miscarried at 6 weeks and was devastated. When people acted crazy about it and tried to feel bad for me, I blew it off because I'm horrible at emotions and said things like it's okay, it happens all the time. And it was my body saying it wasn't ready. And other emotionless jargon to get people off my back so they would leave me alone. I wanted to grieve on my own and didn't want people bothering me about how I was supposed to feel. And literally 2 weeks after that, my best friend miscarried. She hasn't known she was pregnant and told me she was happy because she didn't want it anyway. I didn't freak out or judge her. Your coworker needs to back off and mind her own business. So how do they know you're not disassociating like I was and actually care a bunch? They shouldn't judge. It's not anyone else's job to tell you how to feel. It's your personal decision. We had a miscarriage, never told the future grandparents that we were pregnant, as we wanted to be far enough along for it to be over the first trimester or so. In the end, the first on lasted 8 weeks or so and was fine on the 2-month scan. It died at some point on week 9 or so, or at least that's the understand, as the growth stopped and coincided with that of a 9-week-old. Did we grieve? Nope. We decided that we would not get attached to it until at least 3/4 months had passed, as what's the point of stressing out about something that was not destined to survive? As far as we are concerned, it happened, never mind, let's try again. We are now 7 weeks away from the birth of our first boy. The grandparents will never know about the first one that didn't make it, as we didn't want to get their hopes up too soon. As it is now, they are lit as number $%. And won't stop talking about him, and such as it's the first time they will be grandparents. NTA. I have also miscarried a surprise baby and felt nothing but relief. I was advised to abort by my doctor because pregnancy would be very dangerous for me. The miscarriage meant that I avoided having to deliberately abort the child of my late partner. He had died before I realized I was pregnant. NTA. Everyone's reactions are different. Obviously, you weren't even sure if you were ready to have a child yet. I mean, I get some people being upset by it, fine, but we can't control your feelings about it either. I went through horrific things, a miscarriage, finally having a baby, and being told my cancer will not allow me to have any more, but I read your story and didn't even bat an eye. You are allowed, you feel that way. You may want children eventually, and that's fine too. Maybe not, and that's fine too. Society is so hell-bent on this sensitivity stuff, and we have to be sensitive to everyone's feeling, but it almost feels like no one has to be sensitive to our own if they don't fall within a certain category. NTA. Women are permitted a very narrow range of responses to anything involving motherhood or marriage. The punishment for venturing outside the lines tends to be swift and rather brutal. Sorry, op. You dared to be a genuine individual human being, and that's always going to piss some people off. NTA. I've had 2 miscarriages and I was surprised but not distraught at the miscarriage, and it was a relief that nature took care of it. Not everyone is emotional about the same things. I've had members of my family who can't have kids say things about it, but at the end of the day, I'm not them. I have my own feelings and you're allowed to have your feelings. NTA. It hit me most the next Mother's Day. Grief is different for everyone. I am sorry for your loss. NTA. Also, you don't know how heartbreaking a miscarriage is, maybe the dumbest thing I've ever seen anyone say to someone who had a miscarriage. You know exactly how heartbreaking it is. It just isn't that heartbreaking for you, and that's okay. NTA. This is totally normal. You feel how you feel. NTA, people deal with grief differently. I'd also consider reporting her to HR for now creating a hostile work environment. You've got the email proof. NTA. It's like you said, you are not responsible for someone else's feelings. People that really want children have the right to mourn over a miscarriage, just as people who do not want children have the right to be relieved about a miscarriage. She should stop projecting her rather sexist idea of normal onto you and understand that different people have different wants and needs and thus respond differently in a similar situation.